What's up, Gearholics out there? It's me, Gearholic, here with another review for you. And today we're going to be going over another knife, and it's going to be the Opinel No.8 knife, carbon steel version. So the overall length of the knife is 7.65 inches, and it's funny because it's called the No.8, and I'm not really sure where it gets that name. I assume because it's closer to 8 inches, but it's actually 7.6 inches. I'm not sure if that's actually how Opinel does their measuring or not, but I could be wrong. I'm sure there's some sort of metric translation that I'm missing. But anyways, it doesn't really matter. The actual blade length is 3.25 inches. It's a carbon steel blade. It has a full flat ground blade. Some sites say it's actually convex. I'm not sure if that's true or not. I would say this is more of a flat grind or a full flat grind to me, seeing as how it kind of comes down. But I guess some could argue that it's a convex grind, but it doesn't really matter. It's sharp, and that's all you need to know. It does come with a satin finish blade for the carbon steel. Mine has a different blade finish on it, and I'll explain that in a little bit. It is a plain edge. They do not come in serrations. The actual handle length is 4.3 inches, and it's a beech wood handle. The total weight of the actual knife is 1.6 ounces. 1.6 ounces for a blade that is that is 7.6 inches long, almost 8 inches long. That's actually a really cool weight for a knife like this. It is a manual. It is a manual knife. It is not auto open or anything, and it has a nail nick, I guess, if that's what they're called. I think it's called the nail nick, where you come in and you basically grab it with your nail and you pull it open. The nail nick barely sticks up, just enough. I would recommend that you actually grow a nail if you want to own this knife. Otherwise, you need to loosen it up. I have the ability to kind of pinch the knife blade and open it up, and that works for me. And then it's obviously a Vero block locking mechanism. And the Vero block, basically what it is it's a swivel system. So it swivels to lock it into place. And also when you open up the blade, you swivel it, and you can swivel it to either side to actually lock it. And that's kind of neat. That's a little bit different. It's obviously by Opinel, and Opinel has been around. Opinel Knife Company has been around. They're made in France, or they're based in France. They've been around for a long time, since the late 1800s. They've been making knives, and they really haven't changed their design of their knife in over 100 years. And it's really been a staple for France. And I want to say that this is kind of like one of those national treasures. I think a lot of people know about it in France, or at least a lot of people that love knives in France know about this knife, and other people all over Europe know about this knife. It's becoming more and more popular in the States, or here in the U.S. And I have to say that when I first bought this knife, I really didn't know what I was getting into, and I personally really love this knife. This is the first Opinel I ever bought, and I do have others. And I've done a review on the other Opinel knife that I have, and that's out there. That's the Opinel Outdoor. That's the Opinel Outdoor knife, survival knife. And I put a review up on that, and if you guys want, you can go look at that up. I do not have it on the table, so I will not be reviewing it. But this knife particularly kicked me off into loving the Opinel brand of knife. The one thing I really liked was the fact that it had a wooden handle. I was looking for a knife that was a good, decent folder that I could carry around, and this was such a cheap purchase for me. I think I paid somewhere in the neighborhood of $12 for this actual knife. I want to say that on some websites it's $12.50, $13, $15, all over the place. And that's kind of nice because the knife is relatively cheap and inexpensive, and you can kind of just, if you break it or something happens to it, you can buy a replacement for almost next to nothing. It does come with their actual signature on the actual wood itself, but because the handle's made out of wood, I went ahead and rubbed it all down. It did have a rough feel to it when I first got the knife. It is a work knife, so it was kind of rough. I mean, not like rough, but and it had a very cheesy lacquer finish all over it. It was very shiny, and I really just didn't like that. So I took a little bit of sandpaper and I sanded the whole thing off, and I sanded the handle down, and it had some very sharp, steep angles, and I went ahead and I kind of filed those down, or sanded them down, and really made it kind of fit what I felt good in my hand. There was like a little protrusion, almost like a little horn that came up and back down, and I just kind of took that right off. I really didn't like that too much. And the neat thing is you can kind of customize your own handle really to like your own handle shape or the own feel of your own hand. So that's kind of one of those features I think that Opinel was kind of going for. They do have a generic feel on there, but you can actually customize it to fit your hand. I think a little bit more if you really wanted to. And they actually sell on their website, on Opinel's website, um, they sell the actual kits where it's the Opinel, the knife and everything, with a large chunk of wood just inserted onto the handle, and you can carve away whatever amounts of material and make really cool looking knives. And some people have gotten really, really, really neat with the way that they carve on these knives, and they've done some really intricate stuff. And I would highly recommend that you go on YouTube, not on YouTube, on Google search or on their website and find those cool little those art pieces where people have done with the Opinels. It's really kind of cool, just a neat little thing that you can go and see. Let's see. So we'll kind of get into the blade. I got the blade for $12. I bought it when I first got it. It was really dull, and I went ahead and I sharpened it, and it sharpens really well. I think it's like a 1095 or something. Maybe not a 1095. Maybe it's a 1055, or maybe it's a C100 carbon steel. I'm not really sure what kind of carbon steel it is, but I know that it works, whatever it is, and it doesn't really chip at all. And I've put this knife into some really hard usage, probably a lot harder usage than you would think this knife would be able to handle. And I would say this is a very rugged outdoor knife. I mean, rugged to the point where it has limitations, obviously, but it's not so bad that you can't get away with doing a little bit of work with it. It is a thin blade. The blade, I don't actually have the specifications on how thick the blade is. It's very thin. It's not super thick. I would say it's close to, what's the thickness on the Mora number 2s? Maybe like, I don't know. I'm not really sure. Somewhere along that line. I would say it's the same size as a Mora Classic number 2 thickness, maybe a little bit less. And it is very well cleaned up knife. The spine of the actual blade is very sharp. So you could use this with ferrocerium rods to actually strike if you wanted to. I have used in the past to strike just to see if I could strike, and it strikes very well on the back of the spine of the knife. And the overall knife, I feel, is really, really awesome. I don't mind the locking mechanism so much on it anymore. It used to kind of make me nervous, but I've since grown accustomed to it. And just like any kind of Mora or knife that has a protrusion at the very bottom, you just need to be very careful when you're doing work and make sure that your hands are secure so you don't slip up and your fingers onto the blade. I've actually carved a lot with this knife, and I've done a lot of work with this knife. It is a very sharp knife, and it does function very, very well in that role for cutting wood. There's a lot of videos out there of people using these knives for a lot of different tasks, and this is a workhorse of a knife. It really will take away a lot of wood. For as thin as it is very durable and very secure. And I feel as if the locking mechanism can only get tighter over time the more that you tighten it. It does get loose and it does start playing around, but when you tighten it, it does stay very secure, and you can kind of tighten it up and have it very secure and do a lot of carving. I've actually done feather sticks with this actual blade and used it to start fire, and I would say this is a very good blade to back up your primary blade. You could use this as a backup if you really wanted to. Like, it's a great camp knife. It's a really great knife to have around camp for doing regular chores such as like cutting rope or processing food. This would be a really good knife. I wouldn't really recommend the carbon steel though for processing food. They do have a stainless steel version which is 12C26 Sandvik. I do not own that version, and I want to get a version like that. And they also come with different colored handles. And that's kind of nice. The great thing about this knife is it's so customizable. and Opinel has really done a fantabulous, I almost said fantabulous, a fantastic job at customizing the actual blade itself. You can get different steels with different handles. You can get plastic handles for this knife. You can get stainless steels. You can get blue, green, red, whatever. You can get any size you want to. They come in so many sizes. I think there's sizes from at least 3 or size number 4 all the way up to 12. They may even go smaller. I've seen even keychain ones that are tiny little keychain versions that you can put on your keys. They're just like, the company just went absolutely bananas, and they've really capitalized and have a really high market for really cool things. I would highly recommend that you guys go check this knife out if you're looking for a really cheap knife to kind of play around with. The handles are absolutely wonderful, and they fill the hand quite well. I have very large hands, and as you can see, I can fit all 4 of my fingers on there very comfortably, and it is very rounded and fits very nicely in my hand. And it works for me, and it fits the role that I want it to do. To kind of talk about the blade when it originally came, it was a satin finish. It was totally shiny, totally buffed out and polished, and it looked really good. The reason why I did a boiled vinegar patina on my actual blade itself, and it gave it this black finish. The black finish on it is actually ferrous oxide, and that ferrous oxide coating is kind of like black rust. And what it does is it kind of helps prevent rust from forming along the blade, but it does not help for patinaing. The blade will rust over time if you leave it out in the elements. I would highly recommend, if you're going to have a carbon steel blade, that you oil it every now and then, and really make sure that you clean it and dry it after any kind of wet usage. This would not be the kind of knife I would take into a very wet environment. It could be a very good fishing knife if you really wanted it to. And I mean, these knives are so cheap that you could essentially take one anywhere you go and have it just completely be a disposable, reliable knife. And it does very well. It does very well at cutting tasks and food prep. And I would say that I guess you would call this a gentleman's folder, but I would call it a decent survival blade for the money that you're getting. I have, just testing out the blade, I have actually batoned a little bit with this blade, just because I knew how cheap it was, and I knew that if I broke it, I would just, hey, whatever, I'll buy a new one. And so I actually did a little batoning with this back when it had the satin finish on it. And what I did for batoning is I undid the lock, so that way it could fold, the knife could actually fold. And what I did was I placed it on a relatively thin piece of wood that was probably about an inch thick. And I actually did baton with this actual blade just to see if I could do it, and that seemed to work really, really, really well. And it took the beating quite nicely, and there was no damage at all to the blade, and I was just really thoroughly impressed with it. And that was after I already did a lot of feather sticks and carving with this actual knife. And I personally, I love this knife. This is part of my collection. It's really funny because it's a $12 knife, and yet it's part of my collection. It's one of those knives that I really hope that I have for a very long time, and I hope that it always stays true to being sharp. And Opinel did a really fantastic job on this knife. And it's a very good general purpose knife. And it's so lightweight. I mean, we're talking about that. If you're talking about ounces, you're talking about 1.6 ounces. That's nothing. I mean, there's nothing there. It's like, it's like air white. It's air light. You throw it in your pocket and you don't even know it's there. Really, I mean, it's so lightweight. The only thing is, it is very cumbersome when it goes in the pocket. You notice that it is there because of how big it is and how thick the actual handle is. So that is one negative downside. But of course, if you could customize the handles, you may be able to take more handle material off of each side and actually make it thinner. I don't know if that would compromise the structural integrity of the entire knife or not, but that would be something that you could experiment because it's such a cheap knife. If you could buy 20 of these knives for what it would cost, a serious expensive blade. You can buy 20 of these for that price. So that's really all I got to say about this knife, and I really can't say enough that these blades are amazing. They come in different sizes. I think one day I'm probably going to get a smaller size. This is the number 8 in carbon steel, and I will probably end up getting a number 6 or number 7 in stainless steel, just to kind of test that out and put it through its test. Just don't expect the blade to be super razor sharp when you get it. Expect to do a little bit of work on it. I have different sharpening methods, and the sharpening method that I did on this knife worked very well, and now it has a razor sharp edge. And when I mean razor sharp, I mean it's a freaking razor sharp knife. I mean, you do not fool around with this blade. It is not to be swung around at all. You definitely slice somebody open with this knife. If it was in the wrong hands, you could do a lot of damage with this blade by accident. If for some reason it got away from you. So just be careful. Just be careful out there, with these knives. And I say this with any knife, really just be careful and really understand if you're going to swing a knife or if you're going to do anything with any kind of blade. Just be very careful and really think through your movements and your cuts. Power cuts too, any kind of cut that you're going to do with blades like this, really think that through, because people have lost fingers and cut themselves very severely. And the last thing you want is, if you're in an environment where you cannot get help or go to a hospital and you're cutting and you're using a cutting utensil and you hurt yourself in a major way, the next thing you know, you're not only putting your life in danger, but you're putting other people's lives in danger because they have to watch after you, especially if you hurt yourself. So when you're outside and you're using knives, just be very, very, very careful and very, very conscious of what you're doing and what you're cutting on, and know your limitations. Don't take a knife like this and just go out into the wilderness and expect to live for years and years and years. Be smart and don't do stupid things, and use your knives right. Use the right tool for the right job, as I always like to say. But that being said, this is the end of the review, and that's all I'm going to say about the Opinel. If you really, really like my reviews, please let me know. If there's anything you don't like, or if there's something you would like to discuss with me, you're more than welcome to make a comment. I'm willing to do other videos and other reviews on other gear. I just need to know what you guys want to see, and that's really all I got to say for now. It's a very short review, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. You guys stay safe out there, and don't cut yourselves.